The cruelest heartbreak isn't hearing "I want a divorce." It's realizing the person you love will never know what they left behind. This realization cuts deeper than any spoken words, leaving an indelible mark. The first time Grace and Hale looked at me, I believed fate had finally decided to be kind. It was a moment filled with promise, a gentle beginning that hinted at a future we would build together. The last time he looked at me as his husband, all I saw was quiet exhaustion hiding behind perfect gray eyes. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic outbursts, just a profound weariness that spoke volumes. Neither of us shouted. Neither of us cried. Perhaps that quiet resignation was what made the pain even more profound. It was a silent acknowledgement of an ending, without the catharsis of a storm. The conference room on the top floor of Hale Biotech was wrapped in a silence so complete I could hear the faint hum of the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It was an eerie calm before the inevitable. Outside, everything looked alive, with cars flowing beneath us like tiny streams of light, and the afternoon sun reflecting against polished glass towers. Yet, everything inside that room felt frozen, a stark contrast to the vibrant world beyond. Grayson sat across from me in a charcoal suit tailored so perfectly it seemed impossible for a wrinkle to exist. His attire was as flawless as his business reputation, reflecting his unwavering control. His expression carried the same calm confidence that had made investors trust him and competitors fear him. It was a look of unwavering resolve, a mask he wore effortlessly in the corporate world. Today, that same expression was directed at me, not as a husband, but as the CEO making another difficult business decision. The shift was palpable, marking the definitive end of our personal connection. His attorney quietly slid a folder across the table. The papers stopped inches from my hand. Divorce agreement. The words were stark, leaving no room for doubt or negotiation. The words blurred for a second before coming back into focus. I had imagined many endings to our marriage during countless sleepless nights, but somehow the real moment felt strangely ordinary, devoid of the drama I'd anticipated. No dramatic storm. No broken glass. No accusations. Just signatures waiting for ink. It was a quiet, almost mundane end to what I thought was a passionate love story. Grayson finally spoke, his voice steady and controlled. "You deserve a life that isn't built around my schedule, Rowan." His words were carefully chosen, a final act of detached consideration. I almost smiled. That sounded kinder than the truth. The reality was harsher, a slow erosion rather than a sudden break, but his words offered a gentle facade. The truth was that Hale Biotech had become his entire world long before our marriage quietly disappeared inside it. His ambition had consumed everything, leaving no space for us. Board meetings replaced dinners. Business flights replaced anniversaries. Phone calls interrupted every promise we tried to keep. Our life together slowly dissolved, replaced by the demands of his career. Somewhere along the way, we stopped fighting because fighting required hope that something could still change. When hope faded, so did the will to contend, leaving only quiet acceptance. I rested my fingers against the edge of the folder but didn't open it yet. Instead, I studied the familiar lines of his face, trying to imprint every detail into my memory before it was too late. Memorizing details I already knew by heart. The small scar above his eyebrow from a college basketball game, a tiny imperfection that made him uniquely him, a memory I cherished. The silver watch I had given him on our first anniversary, and the wedding band still resting against his finger, catching the afternoon light. These symbols of our past felt heavy with unspoken history. I wondered if he even noticed he was still wearing it. "Is this really what you want?" I asked quietly, my voice barely a whisper, hoping for a different answer, a sign of hesitation. He hesitated for less than a heartbeat. "I think it's what's best." Not what he wanted, but what was best. His words were a cold, rational pronouncement, devoid of personal desire. Those 4 words carried enough distance to build an ocean between us. I nodded before my voice could betray me, accepting the finality of his decision, the quiet end to our shared life. "Then I won't make this harder." His attorney looked almost relieved, the tension in the room easing as the path forward became clear, albeit painful. Papers were opened. Pens were offered. Signatures appeared where years of love had once lived. Each stroke of the pen sealed our fate, replacing affection with legal formality. My hand remained surprisingly steady as I wrote Rowan Mercer Hale for the final time. It was a name I had cherished, now reduced to a signature on a document marking an end. When I finished, I placed the pen down carefully instead of dropping it. Somehow, even that small, deliberate act felt symbolic, a quiet dignity in the face of immense loss. Grayson signed next. He didn't look at me while he wrote. Maybe he couldn't bear to, or perhaps he simply didn't think he needed to, the distance between us already complete. When everything was complete, he stood first. "The apartment is yours until you find somewhere else," he said, his voice even, offering a practical solution to a broken life. "My financial team will make sure you're taken care of." It sounded generous. Professional. Efficient. Exactly the way Grayson solved every problem, with cold, calculated precision. I rose from my chair and managed a soft smile that surprised even me. It was a flicker of resilience, a quiet strength emerging from the depths of my despair. "Take care of yourself too." For the first time that afternoon, he actually looked uncertain, a brief crack in his composed facade, revealing a hint of lingering concern. Just for a second. Then the expression disappeared behind the familiar mask of composure. I turned toward the door before my courage faded, knowing that looking back would only make it harder to leave. Each step echoed across the marble floor, a hollow sound in the vast silence. I never looked back, my gaze fixed forward, determined to leave the past behind with every stride. Outside the building, autumn air brushed against my face as if the world had been waiting for me to breathe again. It was a cleansing breath, a silent promise of a new beginning. My phone vibrated inside my coat pocket. I almost ignored it, but something urged me to check. My heart skipped a beat when I noticed the hospital's number on the screen. "Mr. Mercer," the nurse asked gently after I answered. "Your blood work came back. We'd like you to come in today." Her tone was soft, but a hint of urgency lingered in her voice. "There's something important your doctor needs to discuss." Less than 2 hours later, I sat inside a quiet examination room, the sterile environment amplifying my anxiety, while sunlight spilled across pale walls. The doctor smiled warmly before turning the monitor toward me. "Congratulations," she said. "You're expecting." The words hung in the air, impossible and miraculous. My heart skipped once. Then twice. Before I could even process the first impossible sentence, the doctor added another, her voice a gentle echo in the sudden silence of the room. "Actually, you're expecting twins." The revelation hit me like a wave, doubling the shock, doubling the impossibility, and doubling the sudden, overwhelming joy. At that exact moment, somewhere across the city, Grayson Hale walked into another board meeting, believing he had just closed the final chapter of our marriage, blissfully unaware of the new beginning unfolding. Never knowing that our greatest story had only begun. The doctor's words echoed through my mind long after I left the hospital, a powerful counterpoint to the silence of our divorce. Twins. I stopped halfway across the parking lot and rested one hand against my stomach, still unable to believe that two tiny lives had already begun changing everything, reshaping my future in an instant. The evening air carried the scent of fresh rain. And for the first time since signing the divorce papers, I allowed myself to cry, not from sadness, but from a profound sense of relief and a new, overwhelming purpose. Not because my marriage had ended, but because I suddenly understood that I was no longer alone. Two tiny heartbeats now pulsed within me, a powerful reminder of life's unexpected turns. Every decision I made from this moment forward belonged to three people instead of one. My life was no longer just my own, it was intertwined with the precious lives growing inside me. I sat inside my car for nearly an hour before starting the engine. My phone remained silent, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions raging within me. There were no messages from Grayson asking if I had made it home safely. There were no second thoughts. No apologies. Just the quiet hum of the city, and the silence of a broken connection. The quiet between us had become complete. I unlocked the apartment just after sunset, the familiar space now feeling hollow, echoing with the absence of a shared future. The space still looked exactly the way we had decorated it together. His favorite coffee mug remained beside the expensive espresso machine, a silent testament to a life that once was. My sketchbooks were stacked neatly beside the living room window, where afternoon sunlight always reached them first. They were a small comfort, a connection to my own identity amidst the changes. Every corner carried memories that suddenly felt borrowed from another lifetime. I walked into the bedroom and slowly removed my wedding ring, a final, deliberate act of letting go. For several minutes I simply stared at it resting in my palm. It had once symbolized forever, a bond unbreakable. Now it looked like nothing more than polished metal, a relic of a bygone era. I placed it inside a small wooden box, closed the lid, and whispered a promise that no one else would ever hear. A secret vow to protect the new lives entrusted to me. I will protect you both. No matter what happens. The following morning, I returned to the hospital for additional examinations, my resolve strengthened by the promise I had made. The ultrasound confirmed what the doctor had already suspected. Two healthy heartbeats filled the quiet room with a steady rhythm that somehow sounded stronger than my own, a symphony of new life. I watched the blurry images on the monitor while tears blurred my vision again. They were impossibly small, yet held the weight of an entire future, a future I was now solely responsible for. Yet somehow they had already given me more hope than I had felt in months. The doctor smiled kindly before handing me a folder filled with appointments and nutritional guidelines, a roadmap for the journey ahead. Stress is normal, she explained. But you need a peaceful environment. Your babies deserve that. Peace. The word resonated deeply, highlighting the stark contrast with my current life. The word stayed with me during the drive home. Our apartment was beautiful, but it no longer felt peaceful. Every object, every corner, now carried the weight of unspoken words and fading dreams. Every room reminded me of conversations that never happened and evenings spent waiting for someone who always came home too late. The silence was no longer comforting, it was a constant reminder of what was lost. I realized that if I stayed, I would spend every day looking over my shoulder, wondering whether I should tell Grayson the truth. This constant internal battle would be no environment for my children. If I left, my children could grow up without becoming part of a complicated battle neither of them had chosen. Their innocence was paramount, and I would do anything to protect it. That night I searched quietly through job listings across the country until one advertisement caught my attention. It was a beacon of hope in the darkness, a chance for a fresh start. A small publishing company in a coastal town called Cedar Harbor was looking for an illustrator specializing in children's books. The description painted a picture of tranquility and community, a stark contrast to the city. The salary was modest compared to my freelance work in the city, but the photographs showed tree-lined streets, small bookstores, local bakeries, and an elementary school surrounded by flower gardens. It was perfect. It looked like the kind of place where children still rode bicycles after dinner and neighbors remembered each other's names. A place where my children could grow up surrounded by warmth and community. Within 48 hours, I submitted my portfolio, accepted a virtual interview, and received an offer. Everything happened so quickly, a whirlwind of change that felt almost surreal. I sold most of the furniture, packed only what truly mattered, and quietly disappeared before anyone from Hale Biotech noticed. It was a clean break, a silent escape into a new life. My lawyer handled the remaining paperwork, ensuring every legal detail of the divorce was completed without further meetings. It was efficient, professional, and utterly devoid of personal connection. I never asked about Grayson, and no one volunteered information. On the morning I left the city, I pulled onto the highway just as the skyline disappeared behind a layer of morning fog. I glanced once in the rearview mirror before focusing on the open road ahead. My past was fading behind me with every passing mile, a distant memory dissolving into the morning mist. While two tiny heartbeats traveled beside me toward a future that neither their father nor the rest of the world knew existed. It was a future I would build, brick by brick, for them. 5 years passed more quietly than I had ever imagined possible. Cedar Harbor never rushed anyone, its gentle rhythm a soothing balm after the frantic pace of the city. Mornings began with the distant cry of seagulls, the scent of fresh coffee drifting from the bakery across the street, and sunlight spilling through the windows of the small illustration studio where I now worked. Life here moved with gentle certainty, measured by school bells, weekend farmers markets, and neighbors who always stopped to ask how the children were doing. It was the peaceful existence I had craved. Noah and Nolan had become the center of my entire world. Every morning they raced each other down the hallway wearing matching backpacks that somehow never stayed zipped for more than 10 minutes. Noah was thoughtful, always asking questions about everything he saw. He could spend half an hour watching a butterfly land on wildflowers behind our little blue house, lost in quiet contemplation. Nolan, on the other hand, carried enough energy for 3 children. He climbed trees before breakfast, laughed with his whole heart, and somehow convinced every stray dog in town to become his friend. They looked almost identical at first glance, yet their personalities made them wonderfully different. Both had dark hair that curled slightly whenever they spent too much time near the ocean. And both had striking silver-gray eyes that caught people by surprise. More than once I noticed strangers looking from the boys to me with quiet confusion, wondering where those unusual eyes had come from. The resemblance was undeniable, a constant reminder of their hidden past. I always smiled and changed the subject before anyone could ask. My work illustrating children's books allowed me to stay close to home, a sanctuary where I could protect my little family. I filled pages with friendly foxes, adventurous bears, and curious little birds while Noah and Nolan colored beside me after school. Their presence filled my life with purpose and joy. They believed every story I drew was inspired by them. And perhaps they were right. They had taught me that courage did not always look dramatic, but often resided in the quiet acts of love. Sometimes courage looked like packing school lunches before sunrise or reading the same bedtime story every night because it made two little boys feel safe. These small acts were my daily affirmations of love. Every Friday evening we walked to the harbor, carrying paper bags filled with warm bread from Mrs. Callahan's bakery. It was a simple ritual, but it grounded us, creating cherished memories. We sat on the wooden pier, watching fishing boats return while the boys counted pelicans gliding across the water. These moments were pure, filled with the simple joys of childhood. Those evenings became our favorite family tradition. They were simple, peaceful, and completely ours, a sanctuary built on love and shared experiences, far from the complexities of the past. Yet even in the happiest moments, one question slowly grew louder as the boys grew older. It began innocently enough, a seed of curiosity planted in their young minds. "Mommy, Emma's class has two parents," Nolan said one afternoon while helping me water flowers on the porch. His voice was small, but his question was profound, cutting through my carefully constructed piece. "How come we only have you?" I paused for a second before kneeling beside him, searching for the right words that would protect their innocence while acknowledging their curiosity. "Every family is different," I answered softly. "Some children grow up with one parent, some with two, and some with grandparents." I hoped my words would offer comfort and understanding. "What matters most is that they are loved." He seemed satisfied that day, but the questions never truly disappeared, lingering in the quiet corners of our lives, waiting for their moment to resurface. A few weeks later, Noah quietly studied an old family photograph sitting on the bookshelf. It was the only picture I had kept from my previous life, a small, faded link to a past I had tried to bury. One where the camera captured only my hands holding a bouquet of white flowers. Grayson had been standing just outside the frame, a silent presence and a memory that now felt distant and surreal. "Did somebody take this picture for you?" Noah asked. "Yes," I replied. "Someone very important once did." The words were simple, yet carried a weight of unspoken history. He nodded thoughtfully before placing the frame back exactly where he had found it. Sometimes I wondered if children could sense truths adults tried so carefully to hide, their innocent eyes seeing beyond the facade. At night, after they were asleep, I occasionally opened the small wooden box tucked safely inside my closet. The wedding ring remained exactly where I'd left it 5 years earlier, a silent sentinel of a past life. I never wore it again, but I never found the strength to throw it away either. It had become less a symbol of heartbreak and more a reminder of the life that had led me to Noah and Nolan. One rainy Saturday afternoon, while cleaning the attic, Nolan discovered an old cardboard box filled with newspaper clippings I had forgotten to discard during the move. My heart sank, knowing what he might find. Before I could stop him, he unfolded the top page. Across the front was a large photograph of a familiar man standing confidently in front of Hale Biotech headquarters after receiving another National Business Award. Nolan tilted his head curiously before holding the newspaper beside Noah's face. "Hey," he said with complete innocence. "This man kind of looks like us." My heart seemed to stop. My heart seemed to stop as both boys stared at the photograph just a little longer than they ever had before. The newspaper slipped gently from Nolan's hands before I could think of the right words, my mind racing. I forced a calm smile even though my heart was racing. "He is someone who runs a very large company," I said softly as I folded the page and placed it back inside the box, hoping to divert their attention. Noah looked at the photograph one last time, his silver-gray eyes lingering on the familiar face. "He really does have eyes like ours," he whispered, his innocent observation piercing my carefully constructed narrative. I brushed a hand through his dark hair. "Sometimes people who have never met can still look alike." The answer seemed to satisfy them for the moment, but I knew the truth was far more complicated. But I knew children remembered the questions adults tried to avoid. Later that evening, after the boys had fallen asleep beneath their favorite lighthouse pattern blankets, I carried the old newspaper downstairs and placed it into the fireplace. The paper curled slowly as the flames consumed the photograph. I watched until nothing remained except pale gray ash. It was not anger that made me do it. It was fear, a deep-seated dread. Fear that one unexpected connection could unravel the peaceful life we had spent 5 years building. Hundreds of miles away, Grayson Hale stood alone in the executive office that overlooked the city skyline. He had conquered one business deal at a time. Hale Biotech had expanded into 3 additional states. Financial magazines called him one of the most influential young executives in the country. Awards lined the shelves behind his desk. Investors waited months for meetings with him. Yet when the office emptied each evening, success became strangely quiet, a hollow victory in a solitary life.